I used to hate sales. I always told myself that I don't like sales. I don't like salespeople. They're all sleazy call salesmen that are trying to get you to buy their stuff. But when I started my business a few years ago is when I realized how wrong I was to believe that. There's definitely less moral and appealing ways to do sales, but I quickly discovered that everything in life is sales. Obviously, when you run a business, you have to learn sales because it's the only way to get customers to your door, and it's the only way to make money and survive and grow the business even further. But when I started learning sales for my business is when I realized just how much all these skills I was learning were helping improve my life in a lot of other ways other than just making money for my business and getting clients. I quickly discovered just how all the areas in my life, like work, dating, socializing, making friends, everything is sales. And I can think of 4 specific principles that I learned from sales that have greatly improved my life. And this is what I'd like to share with you in this video as well. For example, the first principle is to always consider what's in it for them, what's in it for the other person. If you're trying to get hired to a job, what you might think to say is, oh, you should hire me because I work hard. I'm the hardest worker in the room. But that's just too abstract for them. They don't care about your traits. What they care is how you can help them make more money. So instead of saying, I work hard, you should hire me because I'm going to be the hardest worker in the room, how about you phrase it in a way that's going to communicate what they stand to gain from hiring you? For example, if you're applying for a sales position, you could frame it like, I have a really strong work ethic, I work very hard, and in fact, if you hire me, I'm willing to do 50 cold calls per day in order to double the amount of clients you get already next month. Or what will be even better is for you to ask them a question first about how many cold calls the average SDR at the company does on a daily basis, and whatever they tell you, whether that's 40 or 50, you say you're gonna do 70 or 80. Ideally, a lot more than they said, but then of course you still need to own up to it. You do have to be willing to follow up on that promise. But if you say those things and you follow up on it, you're not just gonna get hired, you're gonna get promoted very quickly after. Because you will have established that trust, that you mean what you say. And this was a sales example, but you could virtually apply this to any sector you're applying to, as long as you communicate what they would stand to gain from hiring you. Or when it comes to negotiating a higher salary. And I used to be terrible at this. I pretty much avoided conflict or uncomfortable conversations like this. But eventually, what helped me was this exact principle. At my first ever job, which was in IT, when I wanted to ask for a raise, I said something like, oh yeah, I think I want more money because I think I've been doing a good job, and there wasn't really any tangible items I could name. It was just all vague, like, oh, I've been doing a good job, I'm motivated, I'm showing up, which is the least you could do. But right now, for example, I'm a personal trainer, so I just use this as an example. If I wanted to ask for a raise, first of all, it's important to have done a good job at your work, because then you can have something to back up what you're about to say. So I would say something like, I've been working here for a year now, I've been professional, I'm always on time, 8 out of 10 of my clients have stayed with me for a year, and I think things are going really well. But with this and this I've got going on, things are a little bit tight financially at the moment. And if I could just earn this amount more, I would be a lot more motivated to do what I do now even better. So I would aim to get more clients through the door. Next, I would aim for my clients to stay another year with me, etc., etc. So state what you have accomplished and then make it very clear to your boss what they would stand to gain from giving you more money. Because the last thing people want to do is give you more money. And the best reason for them to give you more money is if you end up making them more money. My favorite book to improve your negotiation skills would be Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Absolute game changer. Other than jobs, the same thing pretty much goes when it comes to dating. What the first date is to communicate what they would stand to gain by dating you. Now, obviously, you're not gonna say things like, oh, you should date me because I do this and I've done this. No, you make a genuine contact with the person, you tell some stories about yourself, Hopefully you have a few mutual interests, and it would quickly become clear that both of you would stand to gain someone who cares for the other and that you can do fun things with, have fun, but also build something towards the future. The second principle that's really helped improve my life is asking people questions in order for them to get to the answer themselves. This is something that is integral when it comes to my job as a personal trainer, because helping people change their habits is incredibly difficult. It comes down to having to change their behaviors. And that's the last thing people want to do, is change their habits, the things that feel comfortable to them. And no matter how many times I tell someone, you should work out, you should do strength training, you should do cardio. Yeah, you know what? Actually eating a burger for you every day for dinner with fries isn't the best thing. You should eat some chicken, rice, and broccoli instead. Who do you think wants to actually do that? Whereas if I slowly ask them questions like, what do you think your health would look like 5 years down the line if you kept eating like this? How do you feel right now after you eat that? What is being low in energy and feeling like this and not sleeping well costing you at the moment? How could things be different? Now, by them answering these questions in their own head is gonna create that intrinsic motivation that has to come from within themselves that is ultimately going to lead to them changing their habits. This is an incredibly powerful way of communicating, and this way you're not just essentially getting people to do what you want, which can be manipulative, obviously, if you use it that way, but it doesn't have to be. It also helps you ultimately help people. Get them to do the right thing that they also want to do, but they cannot right now because of certain things that are holding them back within themselves that have been built up over the years. So you're helping them break through these barriers, break through these beliefs, and make the change that they couldn't have made on their own. The third principle would be to not have that stanky commission breath. And what I mean by that is, I'm sure you've been on the phone with someone, maybe someone called you up probably to sell you some gas, electricity plan, or from a telecom provider, for example. A lot of these guys can be very pushy, right? And what does that do? It creates pushback from you. If someone's trying to desperately sell you to something, what happens is you start putting up a wall and you start pushing back. That's called sales resistance. And so I had this back in the day when I was fully freelance. Every month started and I didn't know if I would have enough money to pay my rent and all my bills. So every time I had a sales call with someone, it wasn't like I had 10 sales calls per week. I would have them sparingly. Whenever I did have a person on the call, then subconsciously I would be so stressed and so anxious to get the money, and that would manifest in the way I talk, in the way I behave. The other person can, of course, sense that through the call. They can sense the desperate energy. They can smell the commission breath, and ultimately that leads to them being pushed away, not wanting to sign up, and I would miss the sale. And it's weird because at the end of the day, if they bought what I had to sell, their life would end up drastically improving. So if I'm the one that's desperately trying to make a sale, even though I just stand to gain a few $100s per month, which wouldn't really change my life in any significant way, but they would stand to lose all the weight they've been trying to lose, build muscle, get confident, add years to their life perhaps by improving their health, then why was I the one that was trying to desperately make the sale? It just doesn't make sense. Or another example you've definitely seen is maybe you're texting with a girl and you really like her and you're texting her a lot, especially early on in the stage of dating her. Maybe you just met and you're texting her so much, maybe she stops responding, and then you even make the grave mistake of double texting or triple texting. Triple texting is crazy. Please don't triple text. But maybe you've sent a few double texts in your life. I've had as well in the past, but that usually happens when the other person is already in a phase where they're being pushed back a bit. It's probably a bit too much for them, all the texting. And then instead of just taking a step back, what you do is pushing even more forward by sending another text, and that's how you get ghosted. Or maybe you've gone on a date where the other person gets a bit way too excited at the start, is maybe way too attached very quickly or very needy, and that ends up creating pushback from you. It's all commission bread. And hey, it's not always fair. Why should it be a bad thing if you are interested in that person and you're just trying to make a lot of contact with them? But unfortunately, that's just something in our nature. If someone tries to push something on us, we just want to push back. And this brings me to my last point, which is being detached from the outcome. This is ultimately what you have to practice to get rid of the commission breath that I had to do. Whenever I have a call now with someone and they tell me they maybe need to think about starting or whatever it is that's holding them back from starting at the moment, it doesn't affect me in any way. My life is gonna stay exactly the same whether they do it or not, but theirs could look radically different if they made the small uncomfortable decision of investing a little bit of money into their own health. Whether they do it or not, that's up to them. And that's what I clearly communicate to them, what they stand to gain, what they stand to lose. But at the end of the day, they have to want to help themselves. Being detached from the outcome also gives you a lot more confidence, and it paints you a lot more as an authority figure, to the point where the other person is going to be a lot more drawn to you. This is now the opposite effect. Instead of pushing them and then pushing back, you kind of take a step back. And what that does is it draws them in. Or back to the dating example, it's like when you ask a girl out. If you're looking unconfident, maybe your voice is shaking a bit, and you ask a girl out and you're like, hey, maybe I was wondering if next week you would maybe want to go grab a drink with me, but if you can, that's totally fine. If you're acting like this, obviously it's very obvious that you're not very confident in what you're saying. It's coming off needy. So why would the other person even say yes to that? Would you say yes if someone was asking you out like that? What's happening is you're making it very clear that you are incredibly attached to the outcome of what you're asking. You're so anxious that if the other person says no, it is obviously going to affect your feelings. Whereas if you state it in a way that's more confident, like, hey, listen, I think we've had a great time here. I think you're cute. How about we go out next week? If you show that you're not overly attached to what she's going to say in that example, then she would be a lot more inclined to say yes, because you are confident and you're not coming off as desperate or needy. And think about it. If you've been on a date with someone and you don't really hear from them, let's say for the next day or up to 3 days, then you kind of start getting in your mind, right? Like, oh, maybe she didn't like it, or I said something weird, and you start feeling insecure. And this is just our nature. It's how we work. And I'm not saying you should purposefully wait a few days before making contact with a girl after being on a date. That's not necessary. But just keep in mind not to come off as overly needy. Now, if you want to learn a bit more about sales, and especially in a business setting, then my 2 favorite books for that are The New Model of Selling by Jeremy Miner. Maybe you've seen his stuff online. And also, this is definitely more for the business side, The Challenger Sell. These 2 books have massively improved my sales skills, and I think they can make a great difference in helping you as well. Also, if you haven't done so yet, join the Self-Improvement Discord. It's all about getting better in every area of life. Link is in the description.